So I'm a member of the EAA Vintage group. Where's what I'm looking for? Here we go. Here's their magazine that just came out. It's all about the Cessna 170 this time. So it's like, what is the 70th anniversary of the 170. But anyway, there's an article in here about Magnetos that I thought was pretty interesting. A guy named Robert Bosch, who was a German, invented the Magneto. He was born in a village in southern Germany. He was the 11th of 12 children. His parents were from a class of well-suited farmers from the region. From 1868 to 1876, Bosch attended the Realschule, the secondary technical school in the city of Ulm. He took an apprenticeship as a precision mechanic. After his school and practical education, Bosch spent an additional 7 years working at diverse companies in Germany and England, where he worked for Siemens Industries. They've been around for a while. And while he spent some time in the United States, and he worked at a lab of Thomas Edison. And if you should all read the book about Thomas Edison. It's really interesting. That man did a lot of incredible things. You know, the electric light bulb and on and on. A lot of different things that Edison did. But anyway, Robert Bosch spent some time with Tom Edison. In November 1886, he opened his own workshop for precision mechanics and electrical engineering in Stuttgart, Germany. A year later, he made a decisive improvement to an unpatented magneto distribution device made by the engine manufacturer Deutz, D-E-U-T-Z. They're still around. Nicholas Otto had invented the four-cycle internal combustion engine in 1848. And with his partner, Eugene Langdon, Otto set up shop to market his invention. Otto's technical advisor was a familiar name in the engine business, none other than Gottlieb Daimler. They're still around. Daimler's assistant was another talented inventor named William Maybach. While Daimler wanted to utilize the newly invented four-stroke engine in an automobile, Otto was more interested in the manufacture of stationary engines. Daimler left the company in 1890, taking Maybach with him to form the Daimler Motorengesellschaft to manufacture his design. 11 years later, Maybach designed the Mercedes automobile. A few years after that, Maybach left Daimler to set up his own factory to manufacture engines for Zeppelin airships. Otto's internal combustion engine was a crude device to cause a spark that ignited a fuel air charge inside the cylinder. It was his device that Bosch modified and perfected, work that would make him famous. The magneto refinement of Bosch and spark plug invention of Gottlieb made Otto's internal combustion engine a product that would change the world. This gave Bosch his first business success. The purpose of the magneto device was to generate an electrical spark needed to cause the fuel-air mixture in a combustion engine to explode. In 1897, Bosch was the first person to adopt such a magneto ignition device to a motor vehicle engine. But only the invention of the viable high-voltage spark plug by Bosch's engineer Honold in 1902 made possible the development of the internal combustion engine. With the invention of the high-tension spark plug, the Bosch-Magneto spark plug combination became the standard for the automobile industry and was quickly adapted to the aviation world. Before the 19th century came to an end, Bosch had expanded his operations beyond Germany's borders. The company established a sales office in the UK in 1898, and other European countries soon followed. The first sales office and the first factory in the United States were opened in 1906 and 1910 respectively. By 1913, the company had branch operations in the Americas, Asia, Africa, and Australia, and was generating 88% of its sales outside of Germany. In the 1920s, the global economic crisis caused Bosch to begin a rigorous program of modernization and diversification in his company. In only a few years' time, he succeeded in turning his company from a small automobile supplier founded on the skilled trades into a multinational electronics group. Bosch had opened a factory in the United States and manufactured magnetos under the name American Bosch. By 1920, the Bosch company had sold more than 1 million magnetos. Bosch's U.S. operation was taken over by the U.S. government's alien property custodian in 1918 as the consequence of the U.S. government's declaration of war against Germany. After the war, Bosch re-entered the U.S. market under his own name and a 10-year legal battle ensued. In 1930, Bosch entered into an agreement with the U.S. Bosch Company, which would market the products of the German Bosch Company in the United States. I think in World War I, all the airplanes that were flying in World War I on both sides of the line had Bosch magnetos in them. The magneto was mounted into two distinct types, a base mounted and a flange mounted. It's two different ways to mount a magneto. You ever time one of these, Phil?
Oh, yeah, for radio?
Yeah? Have you? It goes on to talk here about different things, but what I wanted to get to was another man named Vincent Bendix. Vincent Bendix, born in 1881, lived until 1945, was an industrialist, inventor, and founder of the Bendix Corporation of Chicago in 1907. With the intent of manufacturing automobiles he called Bendix buggies. You ever heard of a Bendix buggy? No. After producing only 7,000 automobiles, they made 7,000 of them. The company failed in 1909, but Bendix went on to invent and patent the Bendix drive, a motor-driven gear that could engage an engine's ring gear at low rotational speed and then fly back to disengage automatically at higher speed. This drive made it possible for the installation of an electric starter on an internal combustion engine for automobiles, aircraft, and other vehicles. The Bendix drive is still in widespread use, so much so that mechanics often referred to the mechanism simply as a Bendix. And there's a Bendix, right there. Bendix drive engages the ring gear to start an engine. So that's why we call it a Bendix. Bendix founded the Bendix Brake Company in 1923 and started the Bendix Aviation Corporation in 1929. In 1930, Bendix invented the pressure carburetor. The corporation sponsored the Transcontinental Bendix Air Race in 1931. Bendix Aviation and Bendix Brake would later be renamed the Bendix Corporation. So, this is a Robert Bosch magneto right here. It fits in a Ronca engine. It even has an impulse coupling. This was built in about 1930. The cam is machined into this little collar right here. There's an indent in there. The points are right in there. And this slips over here. And the timing can be varied by twisting this little collar here.
One mag on that engine?
The Ronca engines had one magneto until 1936, when the Civil Aeronautics Association said, well, we're not going to have any more of these single ignition airplanes. They all got to have dual ignition. So in 1937, Ronca put two of these magnetos on the back of an engine and put a chain drive on it, so they had two magnetos.
Is that two-cylinder?
Yeah, it's a two-cylinder magneto.
How do you keep it from losing its timing?
Well, you have an arm on this. There's an arm clamped onto it, and you can on the Ronca, when you have the throttle back, it retards the timing, and then when the engine's running, it advances the timing again.
Is that impulse coupling? Does it have the impulse?
It has an impulse, yes. Yeah, it does. This has a horseshoe magnet like this. So this magneto has a rotating coil inside and a horseshoe magnet to generate the spark, whereas everybody else's magneto from that time on has a magnetized rotor inside.
You have to take that Magnetos magnets out and recharge them sometimes? Because they get weak after a while.
Yeah, they can be recharged. Yeah, they can. Now these are Bendix magnetos right here, what we call a -8 or a lunchbox mag. Some people call them a boxcar mag. But these were real popular in the 40s. They're like all your 65 horsepower airplanes in the 40s used these. These were in use during World War II in the little L4s and L3s and L2s. No impulse coupling. But on a little 65 horsepower engine, you can, if you yank hard enough, you can get it through 2 or 3 blades and get it going. For anybody that doesn't know, I'll talk about impulse couplings for a little bit. An impulse coupling has a dog or a catch on it, and if you notice, this gear is turning, but the magneto shaft is not turning. It's stationary. So when the engine is trying to start, the problem with starting an engine with this magneto is the engine isn't turning fast enough to generate enough of a spark to start the engine. So with an impulse coupling, the engine on startup, the engine is turning, that shaft is stationary, but it reaches a point where it trips, and then that shaft makes a quick turn and generates a good spark. So that's the impulse coupling right there. I was wondering if I was going to get shocked or not here. This is also a Bosch magneto. This is from a radial engine, and it's base mounted. You know, we have base mounted magnetos and we have flange mounted, so 4 bolts go in the bottom there to mount this magneto. The interesting thing about this magneto is there's I don't know what else to call it, but a donut that goes between here and the engine. So there's a similar gear like this on the back of the engine, but this one has 20 teeth and the other one has 22 teeth or something, and it's a vernier kind of a thing so that we can get the timing right. So you have to set the engine in position, you have to get the magneto in position, and then you have to turn this little donut around till you get all the teeth to line up and put it on. Otherwise you'd be 10 degrees every step. So
pretty reliable. Once you get it set, you don't mess with it after that.
Mm-hmm.
And those were fixed advanced.
They're what?
They don't retard. They're not retarded. You usually start those with
You can't
inertia.
say that anymore. You can't use that.
They usually start those with an inertia starter. You wind them up a little like a little cream separator, and then you engage the clutch and it gives you a quick turn.
Yeah,
3 turns.
an inertia starter. Yeah, there's inertia starters. There's shotgun starters too.
Well, with mags, they put out a spark at really low RPM. You can hand prop a radial it'll spark.
Yeah, this magneto won't turn. But this is the distributor inside the magneto that distributes the spark. This is a Bendix magneto, a -20 or a -21. The -20 had no impulse coupling. The -21 has an impulse coupling. They've been a very popular magneto for a lot of years, and they're very good magneto if the AD notes are up. Originally they had a coil like this which cracked. You can see this coil's got cracks in it. So the AD note required replacing this coil with a red coil. The other problem with this magneto is if you look at the lobes of the rotating magnet in here, it's got 2 flat sides on it. And if you get any loose debris or a washer or a cotter key or something, it jams the magneto up so it can't turn. So the fix for that is a round rotor that doesn't have the flat spots on it, although it does have a little bit of a flat spot. But that's the 2 things you had to do to this magneto to make it a good magneto.
So what happens if the magneto jams? What
Bad things.
what breaks? Does it stall the engine or
Oh, it can break the back off. It can break a chunk off the back of the engine. Yeah.
Aren't there just plastic gear in modern Magnetos? Aren't there just plastic gears in there?
Yeah. These have plastic gears inside. But still, I mean, this is solid to the engine right here. If this shaft were to seize for some reason, it'd be the same thing. It'd be breaking something.
What's the difference between a slick mag and a Bendix mag?
Well, this is a Bendix mag,
Yeah.
and this is a slick mag.
So functionally, though, I mean, they both do the same thing, but functionally, what is the...
Well, I can tell you some of what the difference is.
More plastic.
Okay.
This Magneto has a machined cam on it. This is the cam that opens the points right there, and it's machined.
Oh, I feel the flat side. Okay.
Mm-hmm. In a Bendix or in a slick Magneto, there's a little slot in the end of the shaft, and there's a little plastic piece that goes in there, and this little plastic piece bumps the points inside of the Magneto, and it's good for about 500 hours, and then it wears out, and you need to put a new one in. Yeah, they will go longer, but somewhere between 500 and 1,000, it's going to quit.
Ron, what did Orwell and Wilbur, their mechanic, built an engine? What did he do about spark on that engine? Do you know?
I really don't know. No, it probably had a. Yeah, I don't know.
That's pretty early. See,
Yeah.
talked about 1809 and 10 and 15, but they were before that. So.
Yeah, I don't know what they had. I don't know whether Bosch had a Magneto for them or not.
Bicycle parts or something.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
when you're done, I'll tell you my story about my ignition system, my engine.
Okay. Something else I can tell you is these. So there's two Magnetos on an engine. On a radial engine, typically one Magneto fired the front spark plugs and the other Magneto fired the back spark plugs. On our 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines, early on, they had 2 spark plugs per cylinder. One mag fired the top plug and one mag fired the bottom plugs. And what would happen is the pilot would go do a mag check and he'd get uneven mag drops, and he'd think there's something wrong because it's not even. So they come up with crossover ignition. So now we have 2 Magnetos. This Magneto fires the bottom plugs on this side and the top plugs on this side, and this Magneto fires the top plugs on this side and the bottom plugs on the other side, so that now our mag drops come out even instead of up and down.
And the reason they weren't even was because typically the lower spark plugs are...
Well, the theory was that they needed to fire the tops before the bottom because of the way the gas mixed in the cylinder and whatever, and somebody figured out that what the timing should be, but usually what happened is you got uneven mag drops and it got people worrying, so they did that.
So currently, though, current day engines like an 0470, I thought they were just both timed to 22 degrees before top dead center. But you're saying that
Yeah, they are.
slightly different?
No, because it has crossover ignition.
Okay. But if
So
it was
both-
the old way,
The old way, right.
one would be 22 and one would be 21 degrees. or
Yeah, something like that, right. But we've pretty much done away with that, with the crossover ignition. Something, let's see. All Magnetos have a neutral spot, and you can feel it. Look here. Try turning that shaft a little bit one way. Now go the other way. Can you feel that spot right there? Mm-hmm. Okay, right. If you find the sweet spot, it's going to stay right where you put it. Otherwise, it's going to want to go one way or the other. Yeah. Here. Just turn that a little bit.
You didn't say anything about the cost, but what's the cost of that slick Magneto?
For this Magneto, well, I just had a pair of them overhauled. I got the invoice in the box. $600 a Magneto, something like that.
No, the slicks are like, well, probably closer to 1,000.
Oh,
Or Kelly Aerospace makes them too, and they're like 800.
For a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's overhauled? Or not, I ran.
Maybe a couple $100 less.
They put new bearings in at the same time, do they?
Yeah, they put new bearings in. Now these Magnetos have sealed bearings in them, and there's 2 bearings in. You put the bearings in, and that's it. The tricky thing about these is they have a ball bearing like this, and then the race is sort of cupped, and the same thing on this end. You got another bearing on this end with a cupped race, and you have to work with shims in order to shim up the slack so that bearing has very little to almost no play, and you don't want it slopping around in there. And so it takes a little bit of work to do the shimming to get the bearings adjusted right. So that's a tricky thing about these Magnetos. But I would rather have a good one of these than one of these myself. And it's generally recommended every 500 hours Magnetos.
You order a new engine, you get slicks.
Yeah, that's what's in use today.
Yeah, for like homie.
So 500 hours on the Bendix too, or no?
Not required, but it's
It's as Ron was saying, it's not required, but
there was an AD that
it needs it.
there was an AD that required some maintenance at 500 hours, but they actually rescinded the AD, except for certain applications. And was it 6 cylinders? I think it was. You can keep running it on 4 cylinders, but on 6 cylinders you had to do the AD. And then this is a dual Magneto, so this is 2 Magnetos in one.
Does it cost double?
Does it cost double?
Yeah. Is it?
No one hardly wants to work on
Yeah, these have been kind of a troublesome Magneto, and like Phil says, getting somebody to work on one nowadays is
They put those on the
Cool.
H engines and some of the bigger Lycomings, Pawnees. I think Pawnees have them.
well, that Eagle had, yeah.
And the 172H engine. I'll have those.
What was the point behind it?
Well, I think they wanted more space behind the engine for other accessories.
But now you're back to a single point of failure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but if the gear fails on these other, your engine's probably gonna quit anyway. But
That's not what they tell you in pilot school, Phil.
But
They just say turn the key to the other mag that is working.
if it eats a gear, it's probably gonna quit.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
Are those Magnetos interchangeable between 4 and 6 cylinders and 8 cylinders?
No. This is a 4-cylinder Magneto. You can get this very same Magneto in a 6-cylinder. It just has some different gears inside and a different distributor and
Yeah, it's divided up by 6 instead of 4.
yeah, right.
There's a left and a right mag though?
That's true. There is a left and a right mag. And this is a left Magneto. And if you look at the end, if you look at the Magneto this way, this is left hand and that's right hand. And
Well, yeah, but the left, you can have 2 lefts on one side. But
we're talking about the rotation, not the left side and the right side of the engine. They're left turning or right turning.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's not
And they
confusing at
counter
all.
rotate?
Huh?
Do they counter rotate on the engine?
No.
They both go the same way?
Right. That's right. Most of your Lycoming is going to be left-hand turning Magnetos. You got anything that turns right? No. The old little 4-cylinder Continentals turn right, unless you got like this. If there's a -8, it turned right, but when you get to a -12 with a starter and a generator, then it's a left turning.
Does that mean the propeller would turn?
No. We're just talking about which way the shaft rotates here.
Right, but that doesn't affect the way the crank rotates or
Mm-mm.
Timing.
like Volkswagens, they run backwards.
Oh.
They spin to the left. So you need a left rudder to take off.
There are a few. Yeah, there are a few airplanes that have propellers that go the other way. Most of them turn this way, but most of them turn the other way. And talking about propellers, when I talked about propellers last week, there was something I forgot to talk about, and that was the torque on the bolts on a wood propeller. Wood propeller bolts need to be torqued like once a year or something, because the wood can shrink and those bolts can get loose. And when those bolts get loose and that hub and that propeller start working, there's such a thing as fire by friction. You can have a propeller on fire. I've heard more than one story of somebody flying along with a wood propeller and smelling smoke and wondering where the smoke's coming from, and it's their propeller. Well, I went to, yeah, we went to the EAA seminar in Spokane, and
Someone's talking about that.
yeah, talking about he was flying an airplane with a Kenner engine on it, and he was smelling this smoke and wondering where the smoke was coming from, and he landed at this airport and went up to the gas pit, and everybody was going, because its propeller was on fire.
Peter Carlson, on his first date with his wife, had I don't know what kind of an airplane it was. He had to land in a field somewhere because it
Was
started burning.
loose, yeah.
I've heard of purposely running a car out of gas on a first date. I've never heard of-
Catching the problem.
Yeah, that seems extreme.
I don't know, it didn't scare her too bad.
Yeah, wow.
Married to him for a long time.
That's committed.
So, has anybody got any questions? Daryl,
I can tell you my story because I have a mag and I have a battery ignition.
right.
A little different situation, but had a real exciting. You want me to tell you the
Let's
story
hear
on
it.
it?
Yeah,
Anyway, if you on the, like, I have a big radial engine, mag like that one over there, and it's direct, so it propping it or even turn it with a starter is not going to be enough spark to light it. So you have a battery ignition, right mag, and then both. And the electric starter turns the engine fairly slow. So instead of a magneto on the other side, I have an ignition just like a car. It's a distributor, spark coil, and a points, just like a car and a capacitor. And so that distributor also has a centrifugal advance. So after it starts running, it advances the timing up for starting, because you don't want to, if you fire it with a mag, if it happens to fire when you're cranking, you have a mag on, it's going to kick back and you have a backfire fire coming out the belly. Not a good combination. So you start on battery ignition. So you turn it over, it's a retarded, fires on battery, takes off, you've got good hot spark, you switch to both, everything's fine. Okay, one day I had a case where the starter planetary drive went out, so I pulled the starter out, and you can still fly, you just prop the engine. And it's an easy engine to prop, 7-cylinder radial. And so, just, battery ignition, you just get it primed and pulled through, and turn the battery ignition, you pull it through, you just pull it, I can't pull it that far, and it fires, and stand back, and takes off, takes a while on the radial engine to get them going anyway, switch to both. So I had some person in the cockpit, that's battery, that's on, and that's off. And then the parking brakes are set. So I get out there and plan it, and okay, switch on, and they turn the switch on, and I pulled it, and it didn't start. So I said, switch off, and they turn the switch off, and boom, this prop starts going up. And all they did was turn the switch off.
uh-huh,
Well, your contact points, make the spark when they open.
right.
Well, with a battery ignition, your spark coil, your points in there are up through the ignition switch.
Yeah,
And so when you turn the ignition switch off, that creates
Bang.
a spark, and it goes bang. If there's gas in there, it's going to start turning on you.